Welcome to Ancestors. I'm your host, Scott Wilkinson. Today, we'll explore vital records, the civil or government records pertaining to the most significant events in our ancestors' lives: birth, marriage, and death. Vital records can provide the names, places, and dates of these most important life events.
If you need to have information such as the names, the dates, relationships, vital records can really give you that information. What is more, depending upon which record it is, it can have some really fun information on cause of death and on relationships to witnesses and other information like that.
Jeff Gallup grew up in Southern California, but his grandparents were Italian immigrants, having spent much of their lives in the Old World. In a desire to connect with their heritage, Jeff and his family set out to find the record of his grandparents' marriage. Eventually, that search would take them back to Sicily, and a family reunion they would never forget.
My grandparents were married in a small village in Sicily about 90 years ago. I'm sure all the family gathered to celebrate. A record was created of this marriage. For years, we were told the records had been destroyed, but I guess you can't believe everything you hear. My grandfather was quiet. My cousin Vince will tell you he's the only man that could sit and watch the television for 2 or 3 hours and the television wasn't on. He could just sit with his pipe and think, you know. But I never heard any of these family stories directly from him. He died when I was 5. It was always Nona or my mother that would tell us. I think my mom really told us more these stories than anyone. And it often would happen that on Sundays, whenever we would gather at their house, my grandparents' house up in LA, it was like this little microcosm of Sicily. We would get together and have these great family gatherings and kind of partake of an Italian Eucharist. I mean, we ate the culture. We lived like Sicily for a few hours on Sundays. And my grandmother would conjure this thing up every week. You know, these pots bubbling and steaming and these smells and we'd conjure up the spirit of Sicily in the house. And as long as she was alive, my grandpa, Nona, we had these great gatherings that were, you know, the anchor of your spirit, and I loved it. I just lived for this stuff. After Nona died, I became very sensitive, and I began to mourn, really, not just the death of my grandparents, but the loss of who I am, in a sense. I lost my heritage or my culture. Some of it just dissipated, like the steam over her pots, you know. It was gone.
You can't bring your ancestors back, but you can use documents like vital records to rebuild a valuable connection to them. Vital records are important because they are considered primary sources, meaning they were most likely recorded at the time of the event.
A vital record is typically a birth, marriage, or death certificate that is kept by government officials.
Since the United States had the foundation of freedom of religion and no state religion, it became more important to have some sort of record-keeping entity like a county or a state. And so by the time you got into the middle to the late 1800s, you have states, you know, looking at registering birth, marriages, and deaths. And by the time you get into the 20th century, it becomes more prevalent.
A key to vital records is knowing how to find them. And here in the United States, that means knowing a little bit about the state they were created in. Each state started keeping vital records at different times, and knowing this can save you from looking for records which don't exist.
As far as trying to understand when marriages were available on a county basis or birth and deaths were available on a state or county basis, there are many guides that are published by federal, state, and local agencies. There's also genealogical societies and various publications that are out where you can access these and learn when these records are available for your use. It's just a lot easier for the everyday genealogist just to call up the state vital registration offices. Usually they have a recorded hotline where you could listen to all the rules and all the prices and so on and get the very latest up-to-date information.
Most states will do maybe a 3 to 5 year search for you if you don't know an exact year. But that's what you need, is you need the place, you need the approximate date of the vital event, then you just need to write and send them money.
What you're going to find on the internet for vital records, for the most part, is going to be information about how to order vital records offline. And the great thing about having this on the internet is that it's current information. Prior to this, we had directories or books that you would purchase that would have how do you order from a certain county in a certain state, you know, how much is a birth certificate, how much is a death certificate. And of course, after a while, books would become outdated. And so the internet, being able to go to one of the state's websites themselves and find out, or a county website, and figure out how can I order copies of some of these documents. You find out the current address, you find out the current prices, whether they take checks, money orders, that sort of thing.
Sometime before my grandmother passed away, my mom got my grandmother to sit down, but she had Nona rehearse her family history. And Nona said, asked my mom about this. What are you asking me all these questions for? Rosie never asked me all these questions. Mary never asked me all these questions. What are you asking me all these questions for? What was your grandmother's name? What was her birthday? Do you remember her birthday? What was your great-grandmother's name? And she got a lot from her name. And she wrote down all this stuff. And I think really that's all my mother had, names.
I'd ask different people if they knew anything, and they were the ones that would say that the records were burned and it would be hard to find them. So it was kind of like a wall that we were up against, and almost like, well, you kind of give up for a while, but then that desire to want to know would come back.
Most vital records you find will give valuable information. And while you may be inclined to start with the birth of your ancestor and go forward, many experts recommend starting with the most recent event. So you should begin by looking for death records.
A death certificate will usually give a date and place of birth. It will very often give information about that person's parents. Most often it will give the place of residence, where that person was living, which may be different from where that person died. Other records created around that death would include, for example, an obituary, which gives wonderful family information. A funeral home would have information on a wide variety of things. They are often the ones who actually help file the death certificate and do the obituary and so on. So that's where I found the richest thing for my own family.
If there's an accident or some important event that person died in, usually there's a newspaper article that might be written that might even tell you more about the incident. The death record could lead you to some additional family history stories.
One of the things on a death certificate would be the cause of death, and that can have an impact upon not only yourself, but upon your own children too. If you see that a cause of death is carrying down from generation to generation, it would be good information for your doctor to know that.
I had a little bout with skin cancer a couple of years ago, and asking my family members if they knew of anyone else that had it, there wasn't a lot of information available. And through my research, I found out that yes, indeed, some of my ancestors had problems with skin cancer, and that was very valuable information to the doctor, so that I could forewarn my children and my grandchildren.
What they can do then is take that cause of death and put it directly on their pedigrees, on their aunts, uncles, and direct ancestors, and see trends, see medical trends, trends of heart attack. Some people are actually putting height and weight on everybody, so they could start seeing maybe trends of obesity or trends of all different types of trends, or cholesterol or diabetes and so on. One of the problems you might face, though, some states are deleting, by law, cause of death from certificates.
It would have been easy for us to obtain the death records of my grandparents because they died here in California. But the thing of it was that we always knew that they said they came from Sicily. But what does that mean to a kid from suburban West Side LA? You know, I don't know. Sicily, it was like a fairy tale to me. And so it was to find those records of their origin, their birth record, their marriage certificate. Those kinds of things were so intriguing.
After searching death records, you'll want to look for marriage records next. Marriage records are some of the oldest vital records. They were usually kept even before birth or death records because they often involve the transfer of property.
Marriage records are quite a mixed bag in the U.S. and in Europe. And on some records, all you get is the name of the bride and groom and the marriage date, and the person who performed the marriage. One of the things a genealogist needs to look at, it's very important, is look at who performed the marriage. Especially in the United States. If you see it's a JP, it's it's a justice of the peace, it's not as important as if you saw MG, minister of the gospel, or reverend, because now that could lead you to a church record where you might find the baptisms and other records about the family.
Marriage licenses and marriage applications are the records that are the richest, that give the richest information.
The application will give the information as to the name and the age, sometimes their birthplace. Sometimes they'll even give the names of the parents.
The magic about the license is that it tells something about the people who are getting married. It tells their age. Sometimes it gives their birth date. Sometimes it gives their birthplace.
One of the things that researchers will find in U.S. Marriage records, especially in the early days in the 1800s and the 1700s, is that a bondsman would come forward with the groom to validate his legal status to being married. And the question you ask genealogically, who's that bondsman? Well, bondsman's normally going to be a relative or a close friend or somebody who really knew the groom well, and you could key on that person. Also, you need to look very closely at the marriage records, because if a girl, the bride, was underage, the father or the mother would have to come forward and sign a consent. Some of those consents are not necessarily with the marriage record, but you can get the names of the parents off of those consents. And so it's very important to look at the age, match the birth with the marriage. And if the bride is 15, 16, 17 years of age, start hunting for a consent. That's what's fun about genealogy. It's like fishing. You never know what you're going to catch. It's just a matter of just going for it and opening up the prize and see what you got.
They found this marriage record of my great-grandfather and this woman. And the woman they mentioned was not my great-grandmother. And I thanked them, and I wrote to the Lynchburg courthouse, and I obtained a copy of their marriage record. And I have it to this day, and it's 5 years before he married my great-grandmother, before he left the state of Virginia. And like I said, it was new information to everybody.
Just because you found good information on your ancestors' death or marriage records, possibly even a birth date, you should still try to find their birth record. These earlier records may take you back another generation.
Among the various types of information that you can find on a birth certificate, and again, it varies depending upon the locality, but obviously you'll find the name of the child, the birth date and place. You'll find the names of the parents, and that includes the mother's maiden name. Quite often, you'll find information concerning the parents, such as the birthplace of the parents. You'll find the occupation of the father. Sometimes you'll find they'll state whether or not this was the first, the second, the third, fourth child of the mother.
When it gives that this is the third child born, that's helpful because you have two more children to look for that woman.
While your ancestors may have moved across the country or even around the world, their birth certificates and marriage certificates probably stayed within 10 to 15 miles from where these events took place. In this case, you'll have to request materials from a local archive, such as a county courthouse.
If they're not on microfilm, there's only one place they're available, and that is in the county courthouse. And that you need somebody to search it, whether it be a county official, whether it be a genealogical society, whether it be yourself traveling there or someone you've hired to travel there. Many counties have genealogical societies of people who are interested in helping you. The fee may be very little. It may be an hourly fee, and on the other hand, they may do it for you because you join their society.
In trying to access vital records outside the United States, it can really be a hassle. You have language problems where you have to make sure that the letter or the request has to be in the right language, but also that you're writing the right jurisdiction. Maybe it's not on a town basis, it might be on a district basis or canton basis, and without knowing that, you can spend hundreds of dollars and spend a lot of time and effort and get nowhere. My personal feeling is this is where professional genealogists really come in handy, because with a professional genealogist who specialize in Eastern Europe or in Italy or in England or in Ireland or wherever, they have the contacts. Sometimes the only option you do have is just going there and being prepared to deal with the language problems. But going to the civil registration offices in Italy, going to the Comune offices, or going to the archives and trying to work something out on acquiring the records yourself.
After more than 15 years of searching and still believing the records could be found, Jeff and his mother decided to go to Sicily and see for themselves. While preparing for the journey, Jeff decided to record the event as a documentary film titled Piana, the name of his ancestral village.
My brother and I decided we would make this film about our family history in Piana, in the village in Sicily where our family comes from. And we thought the most appropriate way to orient ourselves, whatever, would be to go through my Aunt Rose. She was born there. She speaks the language well. She is the bridge between here and there. She bridges all these miles and years and distance between the Italian cousins and the American cousins. And these are my mom's first cousins, second cousins. And when her feet touched the ground in Sicily, it was like she'd never left. She was so happy that she'd come.
Rose just lit up like a Christmas tree. I mean, she was like, wow, I am actually here, you know, back where I was born. And she was just talking and just chatting just as fast as she could talk to them. You know, the tears flowed. You couldn't help it. It's just like, you're back home. This is where your roots are.
When I got to Italy for the first time, I was home in a place I had never been. I was so at home. I just fit. You know, I was like a round peg in a square world, and thump, there I am in Sicily, and wow, everybody's little and fat like me. They'd say, what's your family name? Cognome. And I'd say, Lamonaco. Oh, I don't know any Lamonacos. And then I'd say, Vernacci. Oh, yeah, Vernacci. There used to be some Vernaccis here. And then they would say another family name, you know, Salvato. Oh, si, Salvato. And then you say Cleshery. Oh, Cleshery. See, oh, blah, 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 blah. They go off just, they get so excited because everybody knew the Cleshery family. And there were just cousins everywhere. And almost everyone we would talk to, when they'd find out that we were Salvato, Cleshery, or Vernacci, say, oh, we're related. I have a cousin that blah, blah, blah. Your mother is and your aunt and your blah, blah, blah. And it was hilarious, you know. So Graciela took my mom over to the municipio. She and my Aunt Rosie went in there and said, we would like to see if we can find any document of our family. And sure enough, they pull out the book, and Aunt Rosie finds her birth certificate, and it was a very emotional moment. My mom had been searching for years for something, and she found birth certificates, marriage certificates, and there they were, my grandparents' signatures on these old documents in these books. My great-grandparents, you know, these signatures and dates, and that's an amazing thing.
It was just a wonderful experience to see those records, just to connect with the family ties.
I looked over there in the municipio at my mom, and I saw her open the book and look down, and there is, you know, the wedding certificate. There it is. Giuseppe Vernacci, Vincenzo Lamonaco. It was as if fruit was falling from the family tree on the table before her. It's just a piece of paper, but it documents the fact that, yes, I'm related to these people and they're related to those people, and we go back in this place. People were born here, they suffered here, they gave birth here, they were married, they died here, they sweated and toiled, they dug this earth, they planted these crops. I wish everyone could just find that little piece of paper that says, hey, you belong here, you fit in here. This is your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your great-grandmother, whatever, your great-great-great, and here you are. And it's recorded, it's documented.
It doesn't take long at all to embrace these people. The very first time you find an ancestor in an original record, oh, it's yours, you found it. And you do, you almost touch that record with reverence, and you get, talking about it, I get goosebumpy, and you get a little teary-eyed, and you realize, these are your people. They're not somebody else's, they're yours.
Vital records not only establish key events in your ancestors' lives, they can also establish a very real link to your past. And that's what it's all about, discovering your family and connecting with your ancestors.
In the last scene of the little film that we made, we have all of the cousins and my mom and Rosie together at this beautiful table and just eating this feast, swordfish, veal steaks, and it was like the Sunday night again. We were back. We were back. The whole family all together at the table, and it was like a familial sacrament. I was not much of a cook until I came back from Italy. And now I cook all the time. And it's always, almost always Italian. And it keeps me connected, and it keeps my kids connected. It's a feeling of validation to go from America, growing up here, born here, but knowing half of you is from Italy, and you go over there and you open a book and there is your family link on paper. It's in ink and it's certified and it's old and it's real. It's overwhelming. You cannot be the same.
Next time on Ancestors, we'll explore religious records.
It was the church record that brought the average man out of his obscurity in the 16th century.
When Greg Spaker found the baptismal record of his fifth great-grandfather, he discovered a new heritage and a new family.
So here I've got relatives who I thought had come from Germany, my ancestors, and they had come from the eastern part of France. It was a total surprise to me.